Welcome back to Mr. News Art Class. It is wonderful to see your smiling faces. Today we are going to start with a Sharpie, then we're going to color with markers, and at the very end we will use pastels to blend some colors right on top of our markers. Now, if you don't have pastels or if they are too messy for you, colored pencils would work as a sort of alternative. However, keep in mind that colored pencils are not going to get as vibrant and they're not going to be as blendable as oil pastels. For starters, we're going to grab our handy dandy Sharpie or permanent marker, and we're going to make a very, very simple beach landscape kind of thing with an island type of thing. So let's start right at the bottom with a bump for our island. Now notice that this is not as wide as the whole page. It's coming down up from the bottom, and it is fills most of the width but only a little bit of the height, only about a quarter of the way up the page. Coming from the top of this fancy hill island thing here, we're going to have two palm trees that kind of curve up. And so for the trunk of each palm tree, we're going to have two lines that curve. We're going to give that some texture by having these curved stripes, not straight, but curved stripes. At the top of the palm tree, we're going to have three coconuts clumped together, 1, 2, 3. And for the fronds, the leafy bits, we're just going to have a curved line with a ziggy-zaggy going back up. So again, that was a curvy swoosh with a ziggy-zaggy going back up. And make sure that these all kind of curve downwards, because gravity, that's why. You know, there might be one that starts off going up, but then it curves back down. And it's okay to do some overlapping in here. So you could have one that kind of curves back behind a different leaf, and then ziggy-zags back up behind it. Of course, that is a little bit more on the advanced side. If you want to avoid the overlapping, you ain't got to. Again, in case you were hiding under a rock and you missed that whole thing, we're going to do one more over on this side right here. If you think you can do that by yourself, go ahead and do it and skip forward in the video. But just in case you were hiding under a rock, we did two curved lines going up, and then we make a bunch of curvy stripes for the texture of the bark. At the top of our trunk, we make three round coconuts. And then curved line with a ziggy-zaggy coming back up. Curved line with a ziggy-zaggy coming back up. Curved line, ziggy-zaggy. Curved line, ziggy-zaggy. Curved line with a ziggy-zaggy. Once you've got your foreground finished, the island with two palm trees, let's put in the horizon. Now, you could do the horizon straight across the middle. I'm going to do my horizon a little bit lower so that we have more sky in our picture, because I want to do like a sunrise or a sunset and make it a nice, gorgeous, bright, warm sunrise or sunset sky. Notice the horizon overlaps behind the two trees. It is one line that continuously goes straight across, but you don't draw the part where it goes behind the trees. In case you don't know how to overlap, you simply start drawing, and when you bump into your tree, you jump over your tree and keep going. And then when you bump into the next tree, you jump over it and you keep going. So now we have our island, we have our palm trees. This area here is the water, that's the ocean. And this area is the sky, and in between here, that's the sky. We are going to do some very distant hills or mountains off on the other side. Maybe there's like we're looking over a bay, or we're looking from an island toward the main shoreline or something like that. I don't want these to be super tall. I'm going to come down real low, real close to the horizon, and just get some bumpy bits that can overlap behind the tree trunk. And I'm making them get narrower as they come to the middle, just because that helps to kind of direct the viewer's eye towards the middle of the page. Now right here, I'm not going to put the sun, half the sun peeking up over the horizon. Instead, I'm going to put it a little bit above the horizon, kind of in this in-between space. It's framed by these trees, by the water, and by the sky up above. That is it for the Sharpie. We are done drawing our picture. The next step is to just use regular old Crayola markers or whatever washable markers you've got and color what we'll call the local colors or the base colors. Now, if all you have are just the regular, like, classic colored markers, that is absolutely fine. And you could just use green for the hill, blue for the water, green for the distant land, and brown for the trunk, green for the leaves, etc. I actually happen to have this fancy schmancy Colors of the World set, which means I have cool, fun, extra browns, and I'm going to be using this deep almond color for the tree trunk. I also have the bold colors set, which has a turquoise that I can use for the water, and things like that. But if you ain't got none of that, if all you have is regular old classic color markers, then use what you have. It's really not going to be that big of a deal, because at the end, we are going to be doing a lot of fun blending of colors, and that will really take care of any lacking that you might have in the marker arena. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. I'm going to color my hill green, and notice that I'm using the side of the marker, taking my time to color neatly. It's more important to have the whole area colored than it is to have any kind of specific texture or anything like that. But as you can see, if I'm coloring with my marker kind of always going in the same direction, you end up getting these kinds of lines. And that really doesn't matter anywhere on the picture except for the water and maybe the sky, but we'll talk about the sky again in a minute. With the water, we are going to be wanting the idea of waves, and everything we can do in the water to build up with layers, to build up that idea of waves is going to be quite helpful. So what I'm doing here is always moving my marker side-side. That's horizontal, always moving my marker in these horizontal strokes. If they're a little bit curvy, that's fine, but most of them, they're just straight across horizontally. I say horizontally as I have my paper turned the wrong way, you know. But you can see that it gives a texture where these lines of color are moving across the page horizontally. And that's going to be a real big help when we start blending colors to make the waves in the ocean. So take your time as you color the ocean in particular to make sure that you are always moving your marker in a sideways fashion. And if you leave a couple of little splotches, little notches that are still white, that's okay, because there's going to be reflections, there's going to be you know, a lot of brightness into the water as well. Speaking of which, directly under the sun, I'm actually going to leave mostly empty. And again, notice that I'm using these horizontal strokes and leaving some horizontal white strokes that are empty. So that will help when I come with bright colors to get that reflection of the sun on the water when I start blending with my pastels later. For these distant shorelines, you could really go with any kind of green or even a tan, like if you had a sandy tan color. I'm going to go with this iguana green that I think came out of the pastel colors mix or bright colors or I don't know, something. Anyway, I'm just going to color that in with my iguana green. It's a slightly yellower green, which will do great for that distant shoreline. But do you have to do yours exactly the same way as mine? Absolutely not. Shake it up a bit. Make yours have some of your own personality in it. If you want to darken things up and make it closer to nighttime, go ahead and use darker colors. If you want to brighten things up and make it more like a summer day instead of a sunset, go for it. You could even raise that sun up higher in the sky if you wanted to. Remember, there is no wrong way. You are the artist. You decide how you want your picture to look. I'm coloring these tree trunks with deep almond, which again came out of that multicultural colors of the world or faces of the world or whatever set. Again, if you don't have this particular color, that is absolutely fine. You can use just any old brown or tan for the tree trunks, as well as the coconuts. Can't forget the coconuts. Same thing on the other side. And then I'll be just using a regular old green for the fronds, the palm fronds, the leaves at the top of the palm trees. Regular old green for that, which I think will balance nicely with the green, the regular old green at the very bottom of the page. It'll kind of encapsulate the picture with that raw green color. So let's go ahead and swap back to my regular green and see how that ends up looking, putting that same green color up at the top. Now I'm noticing that it's lighter down at the bottom than it is up at the top, and that's because I really only did one pass. If I want this island to be darker, I can go back over it and color it again with the same marker. This is the exact same marker I colored it with the first time. If you do more than one pass with the same color, you do end up getting things darker. But I'm really not too terribly worried about that because, like I said, we will be using oil pastels to blend colors at the end of this project. But anyway, I just wanted to see how this looks with the green at the bottom, sort of grounding the picture, and then the green foliage at the top sort of capping the picture off. I think that's going to do quite nicely. Once we're done with this green foliage, we're going to have to figure out how the sky is going to look, keeping in mind that it is either a sunrise or sunset with the sky, with the sun down that low in the sky. So that is going to make for a quite fun way to color. We'll see how that turns out here in just a minute. Now that I have finished the foliage up top and the sun, I just colored the sun yellow there, the last bit for the markers is to figure out how we want to color the sky. And there are a couple of things to think about. You could just pick a color like orange and just color the whole sky orange, and then use your pastels to blend other colors into it. You could do things like draw clouds and then color around them. You could even use like multiple colors. I wouldn't go into like the deeper purples, but you could use reds, oranges, yellows, even like a raspberry, like a red violet. I wouldn't go as deep as like a violet violet. But really any warm colors will do. But I would really encourage you to not use a blue when you color the sky. Because, I mean, maybe if you've raised the sun up and it's higher and it's during the day, but especially not this dark blue, this dark, like this, I mean, if you had a sky blue marker, then maybe, but it's really just gonna darken things up. It's gonna make the tree harder to see. And it's just generally gonna be, I don't know, not as interesting. So I'm gonna do a sunrise or sunset kind of a sky where I'm just gonna have all of these warm colors slashing across the sky. So for starters, let's grab, I don't know, the raspberry maybe. I think what I want to do is kind of have my darker colors up top and work my way down. The raspberry is kind of a dark color, but and so is the red. But the yellow, the pink, and the orange are going to be really bright. I'll have those down low in the sky, with the yellow in particular being down really low. But anyway, notice that up here in the sky, I do want to kind of fill the entire sky, but I'm allowing myself to move across in large motions that go all the way across. I do not want to go over my tree. I do not want to ruin my picture by going over my tree. So once I get here, I got to slow things down a little. Still going horizontal, side across the sky. As I get down a little lower, I'm going to swap over to a different color maybe. Swap into some red instead of the red violet. And I'm going to have this kind of work its way up into and on top of that raspberry color above it. So I am doing some amount of color blending with the markers, but really not that much. Really just up here in the sky is the only place I've done any blending of colors with the marker. I'm going to do much more of that with pastels once I'm done with the markers. So I'm going to work this color a little bit of the way down. I'm kind of working in layers. And I want these layers to kind of overlap behind the trees. So you can see I've got the red coming down to here. I want the red coming down to here all the way across. I don't want it coming down to here and then on this side coming down to here. I want it to be kind of straight across. So I'm going to work some of that red up into here and into here and into here and in between these gaps. Taking my time to get in between these trees without coloring over the trees that I've already drawn. If I color over them a tiny little bit, it's not that bad because I can, again, color over those kinds of things with my pastels to kind of cover up some little mistakes here and there. But the big idea is I want this to look super clean and neat and pretty and like a beautiful sunset or sunrise. So I know that if I speed up the video like this, it makes it look like I'm coloring super fast, but in real life, I'm actually taking my time coloring slowly, nice and neat, getting right next to the edges but not going over the edges, and trying to be real clean and neat and precise and nice about it. And now I can come back with my yellow. That's the color of my sun. And I can brighten up any patches where I kind of missed, where I left little gaps. I know a lot of you were probably watching me color that in and thinking, oh my gosh, this is an art teacher and he's leaving all these gaps. He's not coloring all the way in. Yeah, I had a plan for that, especially because I'm going to be blending colors on top of this. I'm really not worried about little gaps at this point. See, I can blend the yellow into those gaps, and it really brightens the sky up by adding some yellow into all those little gaps. I'm also going to do the same thing down here in the gaps, but here, if I leave a little bit of white, that's fine there as well. I don't want that to be completely yellow. But any of these other little gaps in the sky, just gonna kind of go fill some of those with some yellow, and it just brightens the colors that are there underneath as I do that. It makes things really shine. There. That is done with the markers and ready for oil pastels. When I start blending colors with pastels right on top of the markers, it is important to remember that pastels will blend with each other, but they also have a little bit of transparency, and you can see through them to see the colors that are underneath. So for example, if I want to take this white oil pastel and use it to create some texture on these water, on the ocean waves. Well, even though this is a white, and it does mark on top of the blue, you can kind of see through it, especially if I smudge it with my finger and blend it. So what I'm going to do is just make some horizontal strokes with my white pastel that just kind of show the crests of waves in the water. I'm going to do the same here in this middle section, trying not to go over the trunks of my trees. But you see how that just enriches the water with a wavy texture. I'm not trying to go like bump for waves. I'm just making straight horizontal strokes, little marks, little almost just lines, okay? I could go back and, like I said, kind of smudgy blend with my finger to kind of blend some of that into the, the blue, the teal color that's already under there. But the more of that you do, the more layering you end up needing to add on top, because it does get a fun little blended effect, but then it kind of subdues the wavy look. It also makes a mess on your finger. So anyway, now that I've done that, yeah, I do like the effect that it had, but now I kind of need to go back and add some more of that texture right on top again. And I don't have to just use the white for this, especially here in the middle where the sun is shining down onto reflecting off of the water. I'm going to come in here with some of my yellow pastel and really push that into here some. Maybe even, since I've got such an orange sky, use a little bit of this orange, especially right here in the middle where the reflection of the sun is, using a little bit of that orange. I mean, I don't want to overpower the yellowness of it, but then also just kind of spreading some of this orange out into the rest of the ocean. It'll just help to kind of give a little bit of cohesiveness to it, that this sky is reflecting onto the water by having some of those colors from up above. Now, if your sky is a different color than mine, keep that in mind. So I think, since I've got a lot of that red and pink in the sky, I think I might come in here with a red. This one's called vermilion. It's a type of red. So anyway, yeah, I'm just going to come in here with some of this red and just make some waves with that as well. Just these strokes, these horizontal strokes. And you see how that gives the texture to the water here. And I don't want to do too much of the dark colors here directly where the sun is reflecting. So I did some on that side, and I'm going to do some on this side, but not right directly in the middle where the sun is reflecting. That's going to be reserved for basically just yellow and white. So far, I haven't added any blue to my waves. I could totally grab a blue when I'm done making these red reflections. I could grab like a dark blue or a teal or a blue-green or even just green, or you decide. But again, you're just kind of making these horizontal strokes. Also keep in mind that it is going to get darker as it moves to the sides, brighter in the middle. So maybe I want to do more of these blue strokes here close to the edge, away from the sun. More of these blue strokes over here at the edge, at the corner, away from the sun. Similar thought with the grass-covered hill. So here in the island, I'm going to be using green, grassy colors. I got a light green, a regular green, and a dark green. But I'm also going to be using some yellow and white directly under the sun, and maybe some orange for reflections from the sky. And I want it to be very much textured in the same way that the waves were textured, except that grass goes up, down instead of side, side. So I'm going to be taking these green colors and making some strokes that go up, down, and let them curve and bend and twist and play. And it's not like I have to make every single little stroke of green grass, but I'm just getting the idea, the texture of strokes of green grass. And here, directly under the sun, I'll use some white and some yellow to make really bright, grassy areas there, and then working more to darker greens as I move over to the edges. Especially, I have to think about the fact that these two trees are going to be casting shadows, and the shadows are still going to be lit by this bright, warm sky. So I think I might use maybe a little bit of the purple, probably not, probably more like a red. I wonder if I have a good deep red. That would be great. Now, red, when it mixes with the green, will kind of turn brown, but that's exactly what would happen if the red light from the sky is shining on it as well. So in the shadow of the tree, it needs to move away from the sun. So it's going to kind of curve down the hill this way. I'm going to use that red for that shadow. Notice how that looks really super dark. Really nice shadow there. Again, moving away from the sun. And with that same thought in mind, the red and the orange might be really good ideas for making some more of that dark grassy texture over here, where some of those colors are going to be reflecting on there, but it's not going to be super bright because the sun is shining directly in the middle, and then it's darker as we get to the outside. Same idea, thinking about the tree trunks. What I want to do, I mean, I could just go in here with brown for some texture and some highlights and shadows, but boring. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sun color of yellow as well as some white, and I'm going to blend that on the inner edge where the sun is shining directly onto the inside edge of the tree trunk. Do that with some yellow and some white. And then on the outside edge, go back in with that red, because I've got a red sky and an orange sky. And I don't want to overdo this. I just want enough of that red to make it a little darker. I've got a dark red that I'm using there. And you see how just a little bit makes it darker on that side. In case you were hiding under a rock and you missed it, I'll do the same thing over here. I'll come in here with a yellow on the highlighted side where the sun is shining onto the inside edge of that tree trunk. And then I'll use my red, because I have a red sky, it's going to be shining into the dark side. And I'll darken up that side of the tree trunk with a red. Okay. And I could add some texture and detail into these distant shorelines as well, but things that are farther away don't have as much detail, so I'll probably actually just leave those completely alone. With the foliage up here, I could add some yellow bits where the sun is shining directly onto, and I could add some darker areas where there's shadows, but really it's just kind of up to you to play with and see how much fun you want to have with it. Same thing with the sky. If I really want to, I could come in here with some more of this yellow in the sky and blend it into the colors that are underneath it. But again, it's up to you how much fun you want to have with it. How much do you want to push those colors and blend those things in and just, you know, have fun with it. Be free. Make it yours. In this lesson, we put together some things we've learned in other videos about texture, about shadows and reflections, about different sources of light like the sun and the sky. And we kind of put everything together to create this beautiful, colorful beach island seascape. If you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button down below, subscribe, share it with your friends, and all that fun stuff. And I look forward to seeing you again in my next video.